So welcome everyone. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I think the keynote session ran just a little bit late, so we'll be here until 12:05 is the plan. My name is Andrew Morris, and I'm the Chief Content Officer for Money 2020. So Money 2020 is the largest financial technology conference globally, and we'll share a bit more about that later. But it's a real honor to be here and to be a part of the conversation at the Hope Global Forum. This is my third year coming to this event. I'm based here in Atlanta, and first opportunity to speak at the event, and it's an honor. So our topic today, so we have about 40 minutes, and the joke was that I would be able to read the title and then our time would be up. So it's sort of a long title, but the topic is social innovation, powering giving, strengthening communities, and leveraging technology to drive inclusive global economic growth. And hopefully our conversation will help all of that make sense as we go forward. So I am very pleased to be joined by Franz Posch, who is the head of corporate communications and also social innovation initiatives at PayPal. And PayPal has been a big supporter of the Money 2020 conference, been a part of what we do, and so it's a great honor that Franz was able to join us today.
Thanks, Andrew.
So you've got this amazing background. You've been with PayPal now for, I guess, 3 going on 4 years. Spent time before that working at McKinsey & Company in a similar role. In PR, you're also an attorney, New York bar. But maybe just as an introduction, is there anything about yourself other than the standard bio that we should know, Franz? How would you like to introduce yourself? And then we're going to ask you to tell us a bit about social innovation and what that means.
So maybe I'll just set this up a bit, talk a little bit about why I joined the new leadership team at
Excellent.
PayPal.
Excellent.
So PayPal is a brand and company that most of you know for years and years, but we actually were reborn in 2015 when we were spun out as an independent company from eBay. And we went public and became independent. And I joined PayPal to join the new CEO there, Dan Schulman, and a new leadership team. And we came in shortly before the separation, and then when PayPal came out of separation. And so after having worked on the legal side and in the political realm and the consulting realm, it was an opportunity to really take a lot of thinking and learning over all the years. And here we have a new company, and it's not a small new company. It's a new company that had a market cap at that time of somewhere in the mid 40 billions and 18 million employees and hundreds of millions of customers. So it was a really incredible moment. And what we'll talk about, I think, more as we get into this is one of the first things we did is we sat down and said, okay, what is PayPal going to stand for? And we really focused on what was the core mission of a company that has a digital payments platform and has a network of consumers and merchants and nonprofits and all over the world. And we started to bear down on a central mission of democratizing financial services. And that means for democratizing the way in which individuals and families can have access to the financial system to manage their financial health, and the way in which small businesses and entrepreneurs can connect to the global economy. And as a digital payments platform, what was our role in our ability to really to make a difference, but to also make a difference at scale? So it was a really exciting opportunity, and we're in the first chapter of our journey on this, but it's been quite inspiring.
Well, it's a very real thing, that mission that you talked about. You go into Franz is based in New York, and you go into the office in New York, and you see it on the wall right as you come in. So what democratizing financial services. To talk a bit more about kind of what that means, maybe for consumers.
Yeah. Well, we live in a world where there's a financial system for decades has not served the full spectrum of consumers and of individuals and families and small businesses, in that it's been very expensive, depending on where you are in the economic spectrum. But the absurdity is it's been most expensive when you're poor. To be able to have access to the kind of financial services lots of us and lots of people take for granted. So it's expensive to write checks, it's expensive to pay penalties, it takes a long time to get a loan. And in a world where, you can do most of your financial services on a smartphone, and where we have software and data at scale, it shouldn't be expensive to do basic financial services. And we are going straight at that. So at the heart of our mission, we actually say up on the wall that we're going to focus on how to make financial services safer and faster and more affordable, and that access to the global economy and access to good financial services should be a right for all and not a privilege that's really been for the affluent. And the numbers are extraordinary. Mm-hmm. There are in the world several billion people still who aren't connected to the digital economy. In the United States, there are tens of millions of people who aren't connected to the digital economy and don't have access to the kind of new financial services that are available, or new ways of moving and managing money. And the dollar amounts are extraordinary. One estimate is that Americans pay $141 billion in fees for financial services, and 30 plus billion just in penalties around checks and checking. So they're extraordinary numbers, and they make a difference when you can go at those numbers. The amount of time people spend. For example, when you want to send a remittance to a family member in another country, for years it's involved lining up, taking time off from work to go somewhere to send your remittance to a grandparent or a relative, whether it's in the Philippines or Mexico or Canada, wherever you're sending to a relative. And then that person has to line up and take time off from work and go to a kiosk somewhere, and it takes several days, and you don't know when it's going to come, and sometimes you go to the kiosk and the money's not there and you have to go again. Well, we are able, and there are others too, but we're able to do it all between a smartphone and a bank, or between a smartphone and a smartphone, and it means it's minutes, and you save all of that time. If you think of all of the hours of time that working people devote to just transferring money, and that you should be able to do it quickly and safely and securely, not spend the time and not pay a lot of fees. Mm-hmm. So we've been able to cut the cost of a remittance from one country to another in half, mm-hmm. And that's, again, billions of more dollars. You take away half the fees, that's billions of more dollars that can move to communities that really need it. So if you can do this at scale, it can really make a difference. And it's not, doesn't solve all the problems of the world, but given that this is what we do, we think we have a part to play in going at this area of our core competence. And that's the way in which we've been thinking about our social purpose and our mission. And that maybe explains a little bit of what's on that slide.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, so the actual first sentence of this mission we're talking about, fueled by a fundamental belief that having access to financial services creates opportunity, PayPal is committed to democratizing financial services and empowering people and businesses, we'll talk about that more in a minute, small businesses primarily, to join and thrive in the global economy. So a purpose-driven company. So PayPal spun off from eBay, becomes this new public company. As you talked about, a large public company. You and the CEO, Dan Schulman, and the rest of the management team define this vision. So let's get into a little bit about what it means to be kind of a purpose-driven company. So I had a personal experience in the role that I have at Money 2020 and with this conference. So I build the agenda for this event. And sometimes that can feel like, well, that's sort of superficial. I'm just putting people on stage to talk about and sell their stuff, and it's just a big commercial exercise. But I was sitting in the office, in the audience, I should say, watching John O'Brien speak a couple of years ago, and realized that the role that I have can have a great influence. Who I choose to put on stage, is it a diverse group of speakers? Are they talking about topics that matter? Are they talking about financial inclusion and financial health as a part of our event? And we can be a catalyst for change, right? So I thought about it, my work has meaning. So that was a personal level, but so both at kind of at a personal level and a company level, what does it mean to be a purpose-driven organization?
Yeah. Well, we have, as I said, we're learning a lot as we go, and I don't think, I think the lessons for each company can be distinct to the way in which you connect with your customers and you connect with the world. For us, we spend a lot of time focusing on how the values that we stand for internally need to be the values we stand for externally. That if we have, for example, a value of inclusion or of serving the underserved, and we put it up on the wall, well, we need to walk in the world the way in which we're talking inside the company. And so we have spent a lot of time thinking about that, and how when you think about just staying with this value of inclusion, sometimes it means you've got to make hard choices, and you've got to decide, well, are those our words on the wall, or are those going to be our actions? So we've had examples where one example of that, you and I have talked about this, took place in North Carolina. We were about to open a large operations center in Charlotte. And on a Friday, we had a ribbon cutting, and the governor, gave us a gift and photo opportunities. And 4 days later, the legislature and the governor abruptly passed legislation that we felt was really discriminatory towards the LGBT community. So we felt we couldn't be the kind of employer that we wanted to be in that environment. And so we did all the things that companies do. You have a letter with a lot of different CEOs, and you go in and you start talking in the halls of the legislature. And at some point, the governor went on television and said, well, companies are talking, but they're not doing. And our CEO said, well, we're going to take action. So we just canceled our plans, and we announced that we weren't going to open an office there, and we gave up. It cost us something, and it was difficult. And we took, it wasn't without controversy, but it was an action that matched our values, and ultimately we felt that we had to stand for the values we'd been talking about. And it was that first moment where you have to decide, for us, are we going to walk the talk? And since then, we've had a number of other situations where we've had a similar, but we feel that if we have a very sound mission, that we have an inspiring vision of where we're headed, and that our values are values that really guide us. So we don't look at these necessarily as political decisions, but as values-based decisions. And I think also it's part of our business. We do serve. Everyone's our customer. So it's a very inclusive business in terms of how we think about who's our customer as PayPal.
Yeah, we were really excited that some of our young entrepreneurs outside had PayPal acceptance for their T-shirts. Franz bought a T-shirt. He was very excited about that. Let's talk about first at PayPal. It's an interesting history of the company. So there's something in tech. Some of you guys may be aware of this. The original founders of PayPal have gotten this moniker of the PayPal mafia, but it's an incredible group of people that have been very influential in a lot of different businesses. Elon Musk is one of the founders of PayPal. Now he's launching rockets off to Mars and doing Tesla. Peter Thiel, an early investor in Facebook. Reid Hoffman, LinkedIn, affiliation. Max Levchin, who was a keynote speaker here last year. And so there may be, and then also the founder of eBay, Pierre Omidyar. So there may be some of this mindset that came from them. But talk about it, where did it come from, this decision to be purpose-driven and make it a part of your culture?
Yeah. I think from the beginning there was a strong sense that innovation and new ways of thinking about the use of technology in financial services, sparked the original, which at that time was a pretty audacious idea that you could do something that was in the realm of the traditional banking world and you could do it online individually or as a business. And I think that certainly during the years that PayPal was part of eBay, Pierre Omidyar is one of the great philanthropic leaders, and eBay had a strong culture of social purpose and giving. eBay had a foundation structure. When we brought PayPal out, we decided that we would not have our CSR and our social purpose work in a foundation over here, but that we would really think of it as coming from the core of what we do. So the reason we use words like social innovation and social purpose is that we are really trying to take our core competences. We sort of looked at the world and said, well, what can we give? What can we do? Well, we can think of ways to create more connectedness and more ability to participate fully in the financial economy and the digital economy. And we can help people take more control of their financial health by moving and managing money, by being able to plan, by being able to connect without cost and without fees that exist within the traditional financial services.
Right.
I think on the small business front, that's been a really important aspect of how we've developed this mission, because small businesses, as everybody knows, are the sort of an engine of growth in communities all over this country and frankly in every country. And small businesses have a hard time, especially startups or businesses, minority and women-led businesses, young businesses, led by, looks like 12-year-olds out there, or 19-year-olds, have a hard time getting access to capital, have a hard time getting working capital, have a hard time being able to connect to global markets. So we have really focused on this as part of it's the connectedness between what we call democratizing e-commerce and economic development. So we know that a small business that connects through PayPal is over 70% likely to engage in international trade. That a small business in somewhere in America, and it's the same whether you're on the coast or in the Midwest or on the West Coast, the data is the same. If you are connected to a global digital platform like ours, and again, PayPal is one example, but we think we're good at this, you can be selling your products in Europe and in China and in India and all over the world, and it changes you as a business. And companies, small businesses that are not connected to the global economy through a digital platform are only, they're less than 10% likely to have a global business or even an international business from one country to another. That makes a huge impact in terms of the growth of small businesses. And that's true for small businesses in European countries and in India and China, where we are in dozens and dozens of countries all over the world, and you can see that makes a difference. And it also changes the stakes for globalization. This idea that globalization only benefits people in big cities is really contradicted by the data of what happens in small communities and small businesses when they can connect to the global economy. And that's a really interesting set of facts. The other thing we focused on is that small businesses have a hard time getting working capital, and that we can do something about that. We provide working capital to small businesses all over the country. When we studied where our working capital was flowing, we found that it was most likely to flow to parts of the country where the traditional banks have pulled out, where retail banks no longer find it profitable to be. So there are banking deserts in rural areas and in cities. And when we studied where PayPal working capital was flowing, we found that of $1 billion of working capital, 25% of it was flowing to the 3% of counties in the country that have lost 10% or more banks. And those flows of capital make a difference in those communities. Because where you don't have retail banks, small businesses don't have that personal connection. The way in which we're able to give working capital loans is because we know our PayPal merchants. So in some ways, the interaction between our payments platform and these local merchants, we understand how their business is doing and what they're able to manage in terms of working capital, and they choose their own formula, and we essentially partner with them in terms of how they can build PayPal into the growth and future of their business. So it's been a really interesting, tremendously popular product, but again, one that has real social impact, and that combination of being able to build and grow at scale, but also really have social impact and really, fulfill our mission, I think is very inspiring to everyone at the company. And it's been, I think, part of how we're also attracting great talent. People want to work for companies that are standing for something.
So we talked about what is social innovation. So I know that the company thinks of it as with kind of three pillars. One of them is the platform facilitating charitable donations. So it might be interesting to talk about that a little bit. And then the other is this whole idea of democratizing financial services and for both businesses and consumers. And then that in turn can lead to strengthening communities and so forth. But maybe touch on a little bit the charitable donations.
Well, we use this phrase power in giving because from the beginning, we have focused at PayPal on building out a global network that connects donors and charitable organizations and nonprofits. So we have a platform that connects millions and millions of donors who have PayPal accounts to hundreds of thousands of nonprofits who raise money through PayPal. And it enables, I like to call it democratizing philanthropy, but it enables individuals all over the world to join together to give to causes in small amounts, but over the platform, these are large amounts. And so you have the ability to participate, whether it's during a campaign, like during the holidays. We break records every year on Giving Tuesday because the number of people giving on PayPal is just rising exponentially during the holiday season. In this last holiday season, $1 billion in charitable giving came across the PayPal platform. And that's remarkable. And these are not large amounts. These are some people are giving $2.67 because they top up a sale with a merchant partner. Some people are giving larger contributions, but the average size of the gift within that $1 billion that were given on PayPal is less than $100. And some of them are they're not necessarily, they're what people can give, and they can participate in something big. I know that one of the things that we have in common with the Hope Organization is we really jump in during global crises, and we set up fundraising drives and fundraising campaigns during hurricanes or during times of need. And it's been remarkable. The more and more people who are now connected to the global platforms through their phones or through their home computers, people are remarkably generous and donate during times of crisis. And because of the way digital contributions work, you can give very small amounts, and you can watch that combination grow. So it's a really strengthening. I'm sure everybody here has done this, but you can participate and watch how, as the community gives, you're all giving together, and that you become part of a campaign or a contribution moment that's very meaningful. And it's really powerful to see how that is growing year over year as more and more people, step into the platform.
Right. So going back to this idea about being purpose-driven, and you gave the example of North Carolina. It's not always easy. PayPal's a public company. Public companies have stockholders, and our analysts are watching, and you're reporting every quarter. It's a very short-term financially driven kind of mindset around a public company. You gave the one example of the North Carolina. I don't know if there are others, but just, are there times when there are, well, two-part question. Are there times when there are pressures that make it hard to stay true to your mission? And then maybe comment also how it's interesting that you could have all these ideals and just give money to them and do it off to the side. But what PayPal has done is made it core to the mission of what the company is about, which means it's who we are. So,
well, look, I think we are, I don't think it's always as short term as you might suggest. I mean, I think many companies are thinking about the long-term relationships that they have with their investors and with all of their stakeholders, your employees. I mean, there are many dimensions to the stakeholders that we serve. We have, we have our stockholders, we have employees, we have merchants, we have consumers, governments. PayPal is like every payments platform, we're regulated in 100 different countries. And so we have relationships with regulators and political decision-making bodies all over the world. And balancing, one has to keep in mind that full spectrum of stakeholders all the time. But we found that the best way for us to do that is to just be very clear about what we stand for. And that we've also, I think, demonstrated that the expansiveness of our mission is part of how we are bringing more and more merchants and customers onto the PayPal two-sided platform. And we have been consistent. And so the message that we bring when we talk to regulators about what we're seeking to achieve for the consumers and merchants in their countries is the same message that I'm speaking to right here today, or the same message we would talk to large charitable organizations or to our shareholders or to our employees. So I think that the part of the recipe is to be open and direct and clear about mission, vision, and values, but also to be able to, be able to do this at scale in a way that engages and involves all of those stakeholders, so that everybody has an interest in, in how we succeed in what we're doing.
And you can do this. This gets into the financial. You can do it profitably. So I guess maybe the scale is a part of that equation for PayPal.
We're a public company. How we do is part of how we're seen and measured. And so that's part of the equation, of course.
So the CEO of PayPal is a gentleman named Dan Schulman, and he made a keynote speech at the conference that I organized last year. And it was a really interesting story. So in the run-up to a big show like that, there's a lot of interaction with Franz and his team about what are the slides going to be, what's the script going to be. And just maybe a week out from the show, I got a phone call saying, we're not going to do any of that. Dan just wants a podium and a glass of water. He's just going to talk. He's just going to talk. And that was very meaningful to me, because first of all, you want authentic content on your stages at an event. But he talked about this mission. He talked about how it's a call to action to the industry around partnership, and we're in an industry like many others where it's hard to do anything innovative in payments and financial services without partnering with other companies and so forth. So that was, and I got very emotional watching that happen, because I felt like I played a role in it, and it was great to see. So on financial inclusion, financial technology, what are some of the specific technologies that PayPal can deploy to help solve these problems? You held up your phone and talked about mobile, but what are some of the other tech things?
No, and I think just to your point about that event, I think, one of the things, and I hope I've already said it, but we know we're just one company, and that we also are trying to build a coalition of other financial institutions. There's a role for everyone to play. All of the financial institutions have a really positive role in this. The technology platform companies, the companies that are connecting people to the internet, the companies that are producing the devices. So this is a coalition that's needed.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons that Dan, wanted to just speak to the industry. Money 2020 is a huge gathering of everybody in financial services. Was that it's about that partnership, and it's about a partnership with governments and with regulators and with nonprofits. When you in a big moment of hurricane relief, for example, you need everybody. You need governments, you need nonprofits, you need digital payment platforms, you need financial institutions, you need everybody on the ground who's working. So it's a great example that this is a coalition, has to be a coalition of inspiration and a willingness to get engaged. In terms of the technology, I think I've mentioned some of them, but some of this is being able to effectively use smartphones and software and apps that enable people to really have clear understanding and access to their money, and all of the security that comes with that. We spend an enormous amount of time and energy and resources thinking about how to protect our customers from cyber attacks, from various forms of misconduct that can take place on the platforms. So there's a lot of technology that goes into that, and some of it is also the positive use of data to manage for risk and to prevent fraud. We also have developed new ways of giving credit so that for our PayPal working capital loans, we don't need a FICO score. We understand our customers, and if they've had a credit problem in another part of their lives, but they have a small business that is sound and is doing what it needs to do to make its numbers, we are in a position to give credit because we understand their business and we can partner with them in a different way because of that interconnectivity that we have with those merchants. So those are a couple of examples.
Right.
I think I talked about remittances, which is another of these channels that exist between countries.
Countries, right.
It's complicated to move money in cross-border ways. So we can use technology to solve for foreign exchange, to manage for international regulations, to make sure that our customers have a safe and secure way to engage in that cross-border.
When so much of it is making it, simpler, faster, fairer, affordable.
And safer.
Safer. Right. Yeah. So we do want to give all of you an opportunity to ask questions of Franz. So I'll ask if anyone has a question they'd like to ask. We do have a microphone. It can take it to you. Yes, right over here.
With these lights, I can't see you.
Yeah.
But I can hear you.
Wave.
Hey, you got into this just before you took a break for the question, talking about how you understand your customers mostly from a data place so that you can make credit decisions based on data you have. And I'm sure you have a lot of data and also the capabilities to really meaningfully look at trends. How do you make sure that you're using that data ethically?
Yeah.
One, and then how do you use those insights you have to give nonprofits and fundraisers insights on how to raise money better? Because you're sitting on $1 billion of giving, and you're probably seeing trends that might be meaningful to nonprofits on the ground too.
Yeah, really interesting multi-part question. So we have a good understanding of the customers that we work directly through the data, but we also do a lot, like many companies, we also do a lot of work to really understand what's the customer experience by trying to put ourselves in the shoes of the customer and how the customer is experiencing us. So we also have teams that will really get out in the field and really, put themselves in the situation of a small business in a particular place or a family, or what are the pain points for customers that we have to address. So it's a combination of the human experience and the empathy that comes from really getting out and be part of the other side of the equation, and what we can understand from how we are doing business with those small companies. We use the data for our customers. So we're not in the data business, we're in a customer service business. And so There are really positive uses of that data to protect customers. In other words, to understand what is an unusual moment that might signal fraud or that might signal a cyber problem. In terms of the relationship with nonprofits, and we have teams that work directly with each nonprofit. And there are different ways of engaging depending on the scale and scope, because the large nonprofits have a very different need than the very small ones. I'd have to go back to that team in terms of, I don't believe that we are going to the point of sharing trends, or we certainly don't share the data of one with any others. We really keep each customer's data carefully protected for them. But if you've got a specific need for your nonprofit or for your business, let me put you in touch with someone on that team, and I can talk to you about what kind of services we have in that area.
Excellent.
It's a good question.
Yeah, over here. Yeah.
Thank you. Enjoying the conversation. I'm curious. I spend a lot of my time leveraging technology to enable those within the K-12 education ecosystem, because a lot of problems start early on. So I'm curious if you could speak to any initiatives or programs you guys specifically use to focus on getting involved with younger groups, organizations to help move that group forward.
Well, I guess I should say one of the ways we're involved with millennials in particular is we own a company called Venmo, and Venmo is one of the most popular ways that millennials transact with each other and communicate with each other. So we are close to that population. Through our social innovation teams, we get involved in communities with education programs that are focused on entrepreneurship and financial health. So some of that is very local. In New York City, we work with a group that helps to train high school teachers to teach entrepreneurship and financial education. We work with the Cherie Blair Foundation on work that they're doing to help educate women entrepreneurs. We have a long-standing partnership with Kiva, and Kiva is one of the great micro-funding through crowdsourcing, and there's a lot of education that goes on via Kiva. We also work with an organization called Village Capital that helps to support community-based entrepreneurs, and very often these are young people in communities who have an idea to address a financial health problem in their community or another social impact problem, and Village Capital helps them to find access to capital and to develop their business model. So it has been I would say there's a mosaic of different programs. We haven't through PayPal directly, like with a PayPal service or through our software, we wouldn't necessarily have something focused on the very young. But we tried to do that through our nonprofit partnerships.
I think maybe we'd have time for just one more. Sure.
Hi, Franz, thanks for sharing the story, and to Andrew as well about purpose at PayPal. It's encouraging to see more and more companies being purpose-driven. My question is, lots of companies are viewing purpose as not only a CSR initiative, which is obviously important, but it's almost an organizing business principle for the overall operation of the business to align stakeholders, collaborate with suppliers, employees, and just all the different stakeholders you touch to achieve that objective or that purpose. Can you comment on the extent to which purpose is used that way at PayPal?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good description. I think we, from the very beginning, felt that we didn't want to have CSR be some kind of separate bucket or a separate checklist, but that purpose we would inject it into the way we think about designing products, the way we think about engaging our employees, the way we think about building out our services to more and more underserved populations. So I think it's definitely, we try to think about it as being at the core of who we are and what we do. And it's consistent with what we do. We have one more question.
Great.
One in the back.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we'll do one more. I think we can sneak it in. Yeah.
Use my teacher voice?
Yeah, maybe so. Real quick, because we're right on time. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you're interested in partnering with groups that are working to close the digital divide so that there's more equitable access to the kinds of online services you're describing.
Sure.
And the reason I say that, just a quick factoid, is that 30% of families with school-aged children in the U.S. lack home access to broadband and to devices. And it's something that I have not heard discussed yet here in terms of financial inclusion, the digital divide as a really essential barrier
Yeah.
to
No, I
access
think
to-
it's interconnected, and happy to talk further about that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, excellent. No,
Oh, is it not? There
no, it's fine.
there we go.
We'll close it out. We'll close
Well, just so you know, lunch will start, but if you all are willing to stick around in the room, you're welcome to go up and ask your questions
Okay.
directly when we wrap.
Yeah, well, let me say something real quickly. So first of all, I just want to say again how honored I am to be here at Hope Global Forum, that if you're interested in these topics of financial technology and want to talk to me about Money 2020, would love to do that. There's an event here in Atlanta that the Technology Association of Georgia is having at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, really cool venue, May the 7th and 8th, called FinTech South. That might be something you want to look at. And we are able to stick around for any time if anyone wants to stay. If you need to go for lunch, feel free to do that. But before we take any more questions, please join me in thanking Franz.